Sometimes the smallest choices stick with us the longest. For Ethan, lighting up that first cigarette wasn't just a mistake, it was the start of something he never saw coming. Ethan Miller grew up in a quiet town in the hills of West Virginia. The air smelled of pine and coal dust, and life moved slow. His mom, Lena, worked double shifts at the diner off Highway 19. His dad, Tom, had spent years in the mines until the layoffs came. After that, he mostly sat on the porch with his old radio and a cup of coffee, pretending everything was fine. Ethan was 17, shy but curious, always sketching the hills and sunsets in a worn notebook. He wasn't a troublemaker, just another kid trying to figure out who he was. After school, he hung out with his friends Ryan and Luke behind Rick's Gas and Go. The place smelled like gasoline and fried food, and the laughter of teenagers mixed with the sound of trucks rolling by. One chilly October afternoon, Ryan pulled a crumpled pack of cigarettes from his pocket and said, "Come on, man, just one hit. Everyone does it." Ethan hesitated, but the pressure to fit in was heavy. He lit one, took a puff, and coughed so hard his eyes watered. His friends laughed, and so did he, pretending it didn't burn. In that moment, it felt harmless. Just a little smoke, just for fun. But that small choice slowly became a chain. One cigarette after school turned into a few before bed. By winter, he couldn't go a day without it. His fingers smelled like ash, and his breath carried the sour scent of tobacco. He told himself he could quit anytime, but deep down, he knew he couldn't. His mom noticed. One night she found a lighter in his hoodie pocket. "Is this yours?" she asked. Ethan lied without blinking. "It's Ryan's." She sighed and said, "Be careful who you hang around, baby." He nodded, but the warning meant nothing. The smoke had already found a home inside him. By spring, the addiction had taken over. He woke up craving it and went to bed craving it. His grades slipped, his sketches turned dark, full of empty faces and broken lines. During basketball practice, he'd get winded after one lap. The coach told him to sit out. At dinner, his mom tried to talk. "You okay, honey? You've been quiet lately." "Just tired," he muttered. His dad looked up from his plate. "Son, you keep that up, you'll ruin your lungs before you're 20. Ethan snapped, "You don't get it," and stormed off. He didn't mean it, but anger came easier than honesty. The truth was, he hated what he'd become. He hated the smell, the coughing, the constant need. But every time he tried to quit, his hands shook, and his heart raced. Smoking wasn't just a habit anymore, it was survival. Graduation came and went. As his classmates cheered and threw their caps into the air, Ethan stood off to the side, coughing into his sleeve. He should have felt proud. Instead, he felt trapped in a fog he couldn't escape. At 19, he was still living at home, working part-time at a hardware store, and smoking more than ever. His room was filled with ashes, his window always cracked open, letting in cold air and the faint smell of freedom he no longer felt. He told himself things would get better, but they didn't. The cravings got worse. His lungs ached. He couldn't run, couldn't focus, couldn't smile the same way he used to. One cold November night, his mom noticed the bathroom door had been locked for too long. "Ethan?" she called softly. No answer. Her heart dropped. She pushed the door, but it didn't budge. She forced it open, and froze. Ethan lay on the floor, pale and barely breathing, an empty bottle of cough syrup beside him. Ashes floated in the sink. She screamed his name as she called 911, her voice breaking. When Ethan woke up in the hospital, the room was quiet except for the slow beep of a heart monitor. His mom sat beside the bed, her face red from crying. His dad stood behind her, silent, eyes heavy with disappointment and fear. Ethan's throat was dry when he spoke. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. His mom took his hand gently and said, "Then don't let it end like this. Please don't." A week later, a counselor named Ms. Carter visited his room. She had calm eyes and spoke softly but firmly. She left a brochure on the table that read, "Breathe Again, Teen Tobacco Recovery Program, Charleston." Ethan stared at it, half interested, half defeated. He'd promised himself he'd quit 100 times before, but something about those words, "one breath at a time," stuck with him. 2 weeks later, he walked through the doors of the recovery center. It was a small room with old posters on the wall and coffee that smelled burnt. The people there weren't what he expected. There was a nurse who'd smoked for 30 years, a coal worker trying to quit chewing tobacco, and a teenage girl who'd been vaping since she was 12. When a man named Carl spoke about losing his brother to lung cancer, Ethan felt something break inside him. He realized the path he was on didn't end with freedom, it ended in a hospital bed, or worse. That night, he threw his lighter into a trash can outside the center. It clicked once before dying out. It felt like closing a door on an old version of himself. The first few weeks were brutal. His body shook, his head pounded, and the cravings came in waves that lasted forever. He'd pace his room at night, chewing gum until his jaw hurt, fighting the voice in his head that begged him to smoke just one more. One night, he texted Ms. Carter, "I'm gonna mess this up." She replied almost instantly, "Cravings last 5 minutes. You're stronger than 5 minutes." He didn't believe it at first, but he held on. Minute by minute. Day by day. After 2 months, he could jog again without gasping. After 3, his sketches changed, blue skies, open roads, faces that smiled again. His mom baked a cake with shaky icing that said, "So proud of you." His dad clapped his shoulder and said, "Didn't think you had it in you, son. But I'm glad you do." Ethan smiled, tears filling his eyes. For the first time in years, he could actually taste the air. A year later, Ethan stood in front of a new group at the same recovery program. The smell of burnt coffee hadn't changed, but everything else had. He picked up a marker and wrote on the board, "Week 1, why we start." He looked around the circle at the nervous faces. "I started smoking to feel cool," he said. "Then I smoked to feel calm. Then one day, I realized I couldn't feel anything without it." He paused. If you're here, it means you still believe you deserve better. That's the hardest part, believing you can still change. After the meeting, a teenage boy came up to him, voice trembling. "Do the cravings ever go away?" Ethan smiled softly and said, "Not completely. But the voice that tells you not to give up gets louder. And that's enough." As he stepped outside, the sunset painted the sky in gold and pink. The same hills that once felt like walls now looked wide and open. He breathed in deep, cool, clean air filling his lungs. No smoke. No lies. Just life. Every year, thousands of teenagers across the globe light their first cigarette just to fit in. Most think it's harmless, just a phase. But sometimes, that phase becomes a lifetime. Ethan's story isn't unique, but it's proof that no matter how far you fall, you can always stand again. Recovery doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means you chose yourself, one day, one breath at a time.